Hello and welcome to the video. In this video I'm going to look at the if formulas within Microsoft Excel. So to get started I'm going to start off with a simple if formula. So in this column here I'm going to work out if the person gets a goal bonus. To work that out, what they've sold has to be a bigger value than what their goal was. So I'm going to start off by doing equals if, open bracket, and to make it simple I'm going to press the FX button to get the argument box. So part one of the if formula is the question that I'm asking, or logical test as they call it. So I'm going to click on the person's total sales, I'm going to put greater than, and then I'm going to click on their goal. Even though that's coming out as true, I still need to fill in the true and the false figure because this formula is going to be copied down and some people might not have hit their bonus. For the value if true, for this one I'm going to say that it's their total sales times by 1%, and I'll just lock that now. If it's false, I'm going to put 0 in. Now I could have put words in instead of calculations and numbers. If I leave either of these two boxes empty, it would put the word true or the word false depending on which one I left empty if there was no replacement for those words. So if I press OK now and I copy it down, you'll see 3 people get a bonus and 3 people don't. What I want to do on this one is I'm going to do a SUMIF. So in this example, these 4 figures are the categories and they can get a bonus on any of the categories where they've sold above 115,000. So I'm going to start off by doing equals SUMIF and do my open bracket. If I press the FX button, you'll see that part 1 is to show it the cells that we're going to ask the question of. So in here, I'm going to highlight those 4 cells, and the criteria is going to be greater than 115,000. Now, technically that should have speech marks around, but if you put it in the argument box, when you move out the box, if you leave them out, it will put it in for you. If I press OK now, you'll see that it has picked out just the one for this first person. If I drag it down, you'll see for the next person it adds those 2 because both those figures are above. What I want is just 1% of that, so at the end of that formula I'm just going to add in that we will times that by the bonus percentage, and again I'm going to lock that. Okay, in the next column what I want is similar to what I've just done, except all I want to know is how many categories did they get. So instead of SUMIF this time, I'm going to use COUNTIF. And again, if I press the FX button, you will see it's very similar to the SUMIF, except it doesn't have the third box. Now the third box on the SUMIF we didn't use, that was an optional box. Later in this video, I will come back to SUMIF and I will show you a situation where you would use that third box. So for this one, same thing, I would highlight the 4 cells that I'm asking the question of, and again I'm asking the same question. So we now get that he got 1. If I copy it down, the next people got 2, the next 2 people got 1, and the poor person at the bottom got none. Now, as well as doing an if and asking a single question, we can combine our if formula with 2 other functions to be able to ask multiple questions. So the first one that I'm going to use is the function AND will allow me to ask up to 255 questions. With AND, all the questions have to return true to get an overall result of true. So if any one of them are false, it will return false into the if formula. So with this one, I'm going to start with question 1 being that their goal bonus has to be greater than 0, so they've got to have got a goal bonus. Question 2 is going to be based on the number of categories. I'm going to say that's got to be greater than 1, so I'm going to say they've got to get 2 categories. When I close the bracket now, that takes me back into the if. I'm going to put my comma in to move out the question part of the if to what to do if it's true. If it's true, they're going to become a VIP, so I'll put VIP in speech marks. If it's false, they need to try harder. and if I press yes on that just to close the bracket, that is done. Now if I copy that down, you will see that only one person manages to become a VIP. If I take this first one and I use the board around the outside of it and I move that into this cell, that has moved the formula across without changing any of the cell references. So I'm just going to use the VIP one to fill back in the space that I've made. So as well as AND, we can also use the OR function. So if I take out the word AND and put the word OR in its place, this will allow me to ask, again, up to 255 questions. The difference being, with this one, only one question has to return true to get an overall true answer. So now, because the first person got a gold bonus, they became a VIP. And if I copy it down, you'll see everyone apart from this person here and this person here become VIPs. Both of them have not managed to meet either of the two criteria. So that was simple if, SUMIF, COUNTIF, if with and if with or. Now if itself can be used within an if, so you can make what's called a nested if. So with this example, I've got these various criteria that they need to meet to get these different percentages. So I'm going to start off by doing equals if, open bracket. I'm going to start with the 20,000. So I'm going to say that what they sold has to be greater than or equal to 20,000. If that's true, what they sold times by 15% to work out 15% of their sales. When I put my comma in to now do the false, at this point for a nested if, we would add our second if in. And you'll find that it follows most of the time a very similar pattern. So in this case it's going to be the same cell. Again, it's going to be greater than or equal to, but this time I'm going to start with the second range here. So it's got to be 10,000 up to 20,000. Now with this, what a lot of people get confused with is they think they've got to lock it off so that it then is greater than or equal to 10,000 but less than 20,000. They don't, because the first question was asking about the 20,000. If it had met that criteria, it would have given me the answer, but because it hasn't, that is the only time it's going to move on to this second question. So if I now put the value in, which is our 10,000, in order to get that, they would get their total sales, and that's going to be a 10% bonus. And again, when I get to the false on this one, I move on to the next question. So I'm going to do equals if, open bracket, again, same cell, and this time it's got to be greater than or equal to 5,000. So for this one, they get a 5% bonus. So again, it's the total times by 5%. Now at this point, rather than putting another if in, because it hasn't met any of the criteria that were there for this one, or this one, the only thing that's left is the 2%. So rather than put an extra if in, I can use the false on that final question to say it didn't meet any of those. So take that figure and times it by 2%. Now at this point, you might be thinking, well, I've opened a lot of brackets here. How do I know how many to close? As you close the brackets, you'll notice that the help moves backwards. As I close, and as I close, when I get to that point and I can't see any more help, I know I've got enough brackets. Also, you may have spotted that the colour of the brackets is different. So as I close the brackets, they close in the colour of the open bracket they represent. If I Control Enter now, I can take that across and I can now get an answer for all of them. Okay, so that was a nested if. So in the first bit I did a SUMIF, but I only used the first two boxes. On this page I'm going to show you when you would need to use that third box. So in this example I'm going to do SUMIF open bracket. If I press the FX button, the range this time is going to be the names of the colours. So I'm going to highlight the column where the colours are. I'm going to lock that because we're going to be copying it down. In the criteria box, I'm going to reference the cell for the specific colour that I want. So in this case it's orange. Now with those two boxes filled in, there is nothing numerical for the calculation to work with. So in situations like that, that is when we would use the sum range. So for the sum range, I now need to highlight the cells where the numbers are. Now for this, the number of cells you select must be equal for the range and the sum range. If there's one more or one less, it will knock your figures off. So again, if I lock that, when I press OK now, it has added up the entries just for the orange. And if I copy that down, we now have a count or a total for each colour. Okay, so as well as SUMIF and COUNTIF, we also have SUMIFS and COUNTIFs. So with SUMIF and COUNTIF, you can do a single question. With the ifs, you can do multiple questions. So I'll start with a count one. So if I do equals count ifs and I press the FX button, you'll see I start with my criteria range 1. So in this case I'm looking at their status. So I'm going to highlight all the statuses, and for my criteria it's that in that status column they're full time. So I'm referencing the cell with full time in. To now ask question 2, I'll go to criteria range 2, and that's going to be that their job rating is less than 5. So I'm going to highlight all the ratings, and again I'm now going to reference for my criteria 2 the cell with less than 5 in. If I press OK, it now counts how many of those rows within the table meet that criteria. With the SUMIFs, it is slightly different than a normal SUMIF in that the fact is at the beginning you have to tell it where the numbers are, which remember with the SUMIF, that was the last thing that we did when we were using words. So part 1, I highlight all of the salaries. Once I've done that, I then go and highlight my criteria range 1, which again is going to be the status column, and at this point I then need to put in what it needs to be in that column, which is the option of part-time. I then do my criteria range 2, which is going to be the rating again, and for this one it's specifically that they've got a 5 rating. And again, you can build up, you can add more and more questions for both this and the COUNTIF. If I press OK, it is now added up the salary column based on these two criteria. Okay. Now if formulas can also help you fix errors. So in this particular worksheet, I've got an amount in kilograms here, I've got the number of delivery trucks, and this calculation over here is that figure divided by that figure. Now the problem with this is because there's a 0 in there, I'm getting this error message. Rather than getting that, I can change that using IFERROR. So if I go to the formula and I add IFERROR, what that will allow me to do is look at the formula, and when it gives me an error I can put something in its place. So if I put 0 in there as an example, instead of the error message I get 0, but equally I could put missing value, please check. So equally that value, if there is an error, can be text or it can be number. Okay. Now just like we used if with and or before, we can also use if with another error formula. So in this specific example, I'm going to use it with the function ISNA. So at the moment, this is returning NA if it can't find a claim. What I'm going to get it to do is to return closed when it can't find it. I'm going to get it to return open when it can. So with this, I'm going to do equals if open bracket. I'm going to do the ISNA formula, and that will then convert the VLOOKUP into either the word true when it gives me an NA or false when it doesn't. So the if can then use the true and false for the NA. For the true, I'm going to say that that claim is closed, and for the false, I'm going to say it is open. So now I can copy that down. So using if with ISNA can give me the ability to show a text-based or number-based result for when it finds an error and when it doesn't. Okay guys, thank you for watching the video. I hope you found it helpful. If you liked it, can you give me a thumbs up? If you think of any if formulas I've missed out, please let me know. I haven't done if average because if average and SUMIF are pretty much the same. There's the same 3 boxes, but apart from that, if there's any that I've missed out, put them in the comments guys. If you like my video, please subscribe and remember to press the notification bell because I plan to do 2 videos every week on various topics within Microsoft Office. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.